There we go. So good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, January 19th, and this is the Senate Agricultural Committee. And we have with us this morning Executive Director of the Conservation Districts and some people from different districts, and we'll introduce ourselves and then you folks can introduce yourselves and we'll get with it. So, Brian?
Yep. Good morning, Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District.
Irene Runner, representing Chittenden North, which also includes Fairfax and Franklin County.
Brian Campion, Bennington County, also includes Wilmington, Londonderry.
I'm Rich Westman. I'm the senator for Vermont.
And Bobby Starr from Orleans County. So welcome everybody, and Jill, would you like to lead off? And
Sure, yes. And I just want to check, would it be okay if we testify like this, or would you like us to sit there? We've got
if
several slides.
that, will our recorder pick up the information from your seat to voices?
They will hear their voices, but they will not see them, but
Yeah.
they don't see them so much either in the chat. So the voices would all pick up.
Yeah, if you're comfortable testifying there, you're welcome to, or if you
Great.
want to move your chairs around the table, and that's fine, however you're comfortable.
Sure, yeah, but maybe while we're giving our presentations, people could sit here, and then when we're answering questions,
Yeah.
Sure.
we can, does that make sense?
Answer them from
From
where
here,
you're
because it'll
sitting.
be a sort of, we'll be looking at each other saying, who's gonna answer that one?
Yeah, and we run kind of a loose meeting, around the table, type ask questions. You don't have to, Senator Starr, could I say a few words? We don't do it that way. So feel comfortable and, just raise your hand or pipe in. So,
Thank you very much. So let's do introductions, and then Rick will be starting.
Yeah.
the presentation. I'm Jill Arachi. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts. I live in Waitsfield, the beautiful Mad River Valley, and I've been in this job for over 12 years now. And I think that's all I need to say. I'll pass off to you, Rick.
Okay, my name is Rick Hopkins. I live in East Montpelier. I'm currently a supervisor with the Winooski Natural Resources Conservation District. We have offices in Berlin and Williston. So primarily we're serving Chittenden County and Washington County, plus a few lucky towns in Orange County. Also in my spare time, I am one of the executive committee members of the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts, Jill's organization, VACD. And then further in my spare time, I'm currently chair of the Vermont Natural Resources Conservation Council, NRCC. So that's another term you'll hear this morning, but NRCC is a branch of state government. We are comprised of 6 supervisory unions. Each supervisory union is 2 conservation districts in area, sometimes 3. And then we have representatives from ANR, Agency of Agriculture, UVM Extension, and then also NRCS, non-voting member. So again, Rick Hopkins, great to meet you.
Hi, I'm Lauren Weston. I'm the district manager of the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District. We have an office in St. Albans. I personally live in South Burlington. I can ranch there. And yeah, very nice to meet you all. And Hillary Solomon with the Poultney Meadoway Conservation District. I live in Middletown Springs, and our new office is in Poultney, Vermont. I'll talk about that a little bit in a couple minutes.
I'm Emily Finnegan. I'm the district manager for Caledonia County Natural Resources Conservation District, and our office is in St. Johnsbury, and I live in Suffolk.
Yeah.
I'm Meg with Action Circles. I am the consultant for conservation districts.
Yeah.
For the record, Caroline Gordon with Google Vermont.
Yeah. So, I guess you're gonna lead off?
Yes.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can sit here.
Right here.
Rick, and then
Okay.
you can do musical chairs a bit, and then when we answer questions, I think we can do it from here.
Sure. So do you want us to go through each of us with our presentation and then questions at the end?
Yeah, and if we have, if the committee has a question during, then just pipe in.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Well,
Great. And there's a slideshow?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're live, everybody in the world's watching. You better use your
How many-
words.
the way for you to see which slide is up is to peek over there in the screen. You
How
can
many
see it.
viewers did we have yesterday? 2 million or 3 million viewers?
I can't count that. It's a lot.
Well,
it's
at least folks are
amazing.
seeing my better side.
It is amazing
Yeah.
how many people will punch in and watch for a while. And of course, they can't holler back at us, so we're pretty safe. But no, it's really a good system so that people that can't travel or don't want to lose a whole day, or a couple of hours. It's a long ways from the top of the state to Montpelier, from the southern part. So it gives more people an opportunity to hear and see what's going on here in the state house. So,
Yeah.
no, I was a little skeptical at first, but any change from normal is, you scratch your head and wonder about it. But I think that's worked quite well for our citizens. That's what we're all here for, is
Exactly.
try to make life a little better for them. So they don't believe that all the time or say that much, but that's why we're here.
Right.
Yeah, so welcome.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. So I was asked to sort of kick this off and essentially try to give you all an introduction to these things that we call the conservation districts, the natural resource conservation districts. In other states, they're called other things, most notably the soil and water conservation districts, but primarily, however you label them, we're all there in Vermont. There are 14 of us conservation districts to basically conserve, protect, improve, help people understand conservation, soil, water, forests, agricultural activities. And so the conservation districts actually first started back in the 1930s, the late 1930s, with the Dust Bowl situation that affected so many people in the Midwest. So the first conservation district in Vermont was actually created in 1940 in the Poultney Meadowy area down near Rutland. Hillary is here from the Poultney Conservation District, so she can tell you a little bit more about her particular conservation district area. But anyway, there are 14 of us that have been around in Vermont since the 1940s. And if I could ask you to flip to the next slide. There we go. Yeah, so there is a familiar image of Vermont that shows in the multiple colors there the locations and extent of each of the conservation districts. Pretty much they're set up based on county boundaries. There are a few exceptions here and there, but the key is we have statewide coverage in all areas of Vermont. Different sizes, different populations served, different land use types, different breakdown of land use. And the less distinct lines, the white lines on that map are our river basin boundaries, the Lamoille, the Winooski, the Hoosick, the Battenkill. So again, each of the districts work within particular river basins. So as well as the counties. So here are basically 4 bullet points about what the conservation districts do. They're rooted in the communities that they serve. They have very close connections with a lot of the landowners in those particular district areas, whether they're forest landowners, agricultural landowners, just, you know, your basic homeowners, even driveways, lawns, you know, dealing with runoff and erosion, stormwater, a term that you're all familiar with. The conservation districts, regardless of where they are, they work at the grassroots level. All the conservation districts and the VACD, the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts, and the Natural Resource Conservation Council work very closely with state government, the Agency of Agriculture, the Agency of Natural Resources, UVM Extension, Housing Community Affairs, you know, a lot of different branches of state government that the conservation districts work with, and the federal government, most notably USDA, NRCS, FSA, US Fish and Wildlife Services, another partner of all the districts. Helping landowners, I think, is the key distinguishing feature for the conservation districts. We are very dialed in to what the landowners are telling us, problems, priorities, issues, concerns from a natural resources standpoint. Again, soil, water, wildlife, forest habitat, riparian habitat.
You do work with foresters, people that have wood lots and some.
Yes, we do. Again, and you'll hear more of this later this morning, but right now we tend to have to follow where the money takes us. And right now there's a lot of money for water quality purposes. So invasive species management affecting our forests. There are great opportunities for us, but we're just not able to get in to the extent that I think that we could and would like to. But certainly logging, erosion, logging skidder bridges, that sort of activity is where the districts are. So, but yeah, the conservation districts are really there to connect people with their land, the resources, and financial means and technical means to protect and improve their resource base. So lastly, or the next slide, please. This slide is definitely, there's a lot going on here. Certainly this slide show is available as a paper document too.
They're all, this whole presentation is on your webpage.
Yeah. Okay. So you can study this in greater detail than what you may be able to see on the wall here, but I'll try to just interpret a little bit of it. State of Vermont authorizes funding. The funding that the conservation districts receive from the state is awarded to the Agency of Agriculture. The Agency of Agriculture then works very closely with the Natural Resource Conservation Council. The council then awards the money out to the conservation districts. VACD off to the, I'm going to have to read my version of this. VACD, the blue box on the left, also receives funding from the council directly. VACD can also receive funding directly from the Agency of Agriculture. Over on the right, we have the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. Their main office is up in Colchester, and they're a very large partner of the conservation districts. The conservation districts themselves are represented in that orange box, and then most notably, not at the bottom, but in this figure, the landowners, the farmers, the forest landowners, the towns, and just the general public for a lot of the projects and activities, education that we do across the state. So if you have a moment, definitely, there's a lot of fine print in this image that I can't begin to describe to you in the time that I have. But there are a lot of moving parts to this. And another resource that is also on the Vermont Association of Conservation Districts is our NR's Natural Resource Conservation District, our guidance handbook. That outlines in very clear detail for supervisors, and supervisors are board members for every district. They're elected officials. There are 5 supervisors in each district. We also have associate supervisors. Those are individuals that have chosen to work with the conservation districts. They don't have any authority when it comes to voting on topics or issues that the district votes on. But it's a document that I think I refer to quite often. It identifies the duties and powers that the conservation districts have. It talks about our creation, our enabling statute, talks about the Conservation Council, how they're set up, and the duties and obligations of supervisors. So last slide is, before I pass it on to Emily, this is why we're here today to speak with you, is basically to ask for $3 million to help all the districts meet and succeed in their obligations and in the performance of their duties. So,
Well, I know last year we had $1 million in it, and then it got right at the tail end, it got reduced to maybe 200,000 or something like that.
Yes, 250,000.
Yeah, 250, and
Plus one-time funds as well.
or one-time capital.
yeah. No, I think I visited your program you had over in Highgate, I think.
That's actually.
It's that one,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you do great work. How'd your little trees today? Did they ever grow?
They are, yes.
Yeah, they're growing.
They're growing, slowly but surely, they're growing.
Yeah. No, are there any questions or?
No, it's very good.
So Emily, Lauren, and Hillary, folks behind me are going to get into more detail about my final statement and the request that I've left with you for your consideration. So thank you.
Yeah, we may have questions, once we get to the end, we'll do a
Yes.
little round of questions.
Hi, everyone.
Morning.
So if you could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so last year, the legislature, as you said, appropriated an additional $250,000 for the conservation districts, for a total base appropriation of $362,000. So in practice, this allowed us to increase the core funding for each district to $20,000, which is more than double what we had been receiving for at least the previous 10 years. The base budget of the NRCC had been $112,000 for over a decade.
Yeah.
And that sort of level of funding created this situation where every district is really piecemealing together grants to support not only the district manager, but any staff that they're interested in hiring. And it sort of forces us to put personnel funding in every single grant to cover our operational costs as well.
So a lot of time is spent writing grants.
Writing and then administering grants.
Yeah.
Yeah, and reporting and invoicing and all that kind of stuff. So with this additional core funding, at least for our district, Caledonia County, it really gave me and the Board of Supervisors the confidence to hire someone additional. So we're in the midst of hiring an agricultural staff person. I'm doing interviews right now. And hopefully that person will be on board by FY24. So by April, hopefully. But FY24 is more real, maybe a better goal. So it was a very real increase for the Caledonia district to have that confidence. Other districts were able to provide benefits to their staff for the first time. As small organizations, we really struggle to provide comparable benefits to other organizations, you know, these folks that we could be hiring, or district managers, quite frankly, could be working for in comparison to what we can offer as small organizations. But still, you know, this core funding of $20,000 still means that, you know, my salary and any staff salary, as I said before, is sort of distributed throughout these small grants that are not only an administrative burden, but sort of are unpredictable. So it's a little bit challenging to create these sort of long-term jobs that agricultural staff people in particular, and district managers as well, want to stay in for the long term. So if you go to that next slide, please. So yeah, so this year we're in the legislature asking for an increase, a base budget, increasing NRCC's base budget to $3 million. So that would support the administrative and operational costs of the 14 natural resource conservation districts. And you know, for each district, it would sort of go towards a variety of things: salary and benefits, recruitment and training. We currently offer per diems to supervisors for attending board meetings. It's not very much, and doesn't really cover the time and effort that it takes to be an engaged board supervisor. Outreach and community assessments for new state programs, as well as for our existing programs. You know, we really exist to serve the residents of our districts, and figuring out what those needs are, you know, that's not funded by any particular grant that we hold, but it's really important for us to serve the needs of the landowners in the district. Technology needs and software upgrades, and increased administrative and grant management capacity at NRCC, who is a relatively large funder of each district. I think for the Caledonia Natural Resources Conservation District, it would really allow me to create this agricultural staff position with some room for advancement, not only monetarily, but in skills and relationship building, and allow me to create a job that someone wants to stay in for a long time. You know, our role is primarily as this liaison between landowners and the state government, and creating that relationship with a landowner takes a long time, creating trust with them and helping them, you know, having enough knowledge to be able to sit with them and figure out what it is they want and what it is that the land needs. That, you know, having the knowledge to figure out how to do that, and also like navigate all of the state programs and federal programs that exist to help landowners. It just takes time to figure it all out. And I think it would allow us to really create that position.
Farmers, like there's some ag grants that USDA puts out and Vermont agency. Do you help them do grant writing?
Yes, we write the grants in many cases.
Yeah.
I'm helping a producer now who has a contract with NRCS to put in a large new manure pit. I'm helping him, you know, USDA will basically pay for basically what the farmer will be left with is about, I think it's like $70,000. And so I'm helping him apply for an agency of ag, best management practices, Equip Assist, that's what it's called. It basically brings the cost up to 90%. And then to cover the last 10%, I'm helping him apply for a Vermont Housing and Conservation Board water quality grant. So that's 3 grant sources that, you know, he doesn't have a computer, he just has an iPad. So he's coming to my office and we're gonna, you know, I'm gonna type stuff in and he's gonna tell me what to type. I gotta log in for him and everything. So, you know, it's that kind of work is super important, but takes so much time.
You work a lot, do you work a lot with small farms, or is it right across the board?
Yeah, it's kind of across the board. That's a good question. I think we try to work with all the farms that any farm that calls us, but the funding sources available do skew larger and dairy water quality related right now. You know, the Dairy Business Innovation Center is a pretty large source of grant funds for farmers right now, but it's dairy focused. So, you know, there's a pig farm that has called NRCS in the last couple of days and they want help, and I sort of struggle to figure out how exactly to help them. Well, so we help everyone, but there are some farms that have more options than others, basically. Yeah. And the Franklin, you know, I think Lauren will talk about this, but the Franklin County Natural Resources Conservation District created a guide for agricultural producers. That's like, what, 70 pages?
Six now.
Quite long of all the grant sources available to producers. Yeah, so that's my spiel.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joe.
All right.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the funds that we received last year for the capital funds.
Yeah.
Of course, Pulteney Meadowy received funds for a new office building, which we're so thrilled with. It was, I don't know, I get a little emotional, but we were the first conservation district to be created, and our certificate is from 1940. And we've been sort of floating around since then in different locations. And to now have a space, we had a phone call last week from a local private school that wanted to do something. They were going to be in school on Martin Luther King Day. And they wanted to do some community service. And they came to our office and they helped us make these little soap packets that we hang on our little seedling trees to keep the deer from eating them. So they made 700 soap packets on Martin Luther King Day.
That's great.
So yeah, just, to be able to do something spontaneous, to not have to find a location. We have 2 workshops that we're sponsoring for farmers in February. They're going to be at our office. It's been already amazing for us. And we just moved into the building in April.
So after 80 years, you got a roof over your head.
We do. And it's not,
Right.
there are only a couple of conservation districts that aren't co-housed with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. That's the natural way that conservation districts sort of are housed. But there are a couple of us that weren't. And so it's been great. And we also used some of our funding from last year, the core funding, to hire a new staff person, somebody who was with a seasonal person with our nursery through the summer, and she stayed on with us, and she's helping out in all of our program areas. And that's been great. And we had a little empty space where she has a desk now. She has her own office. So that's been wonderful. And in speaking with the other districts who received some of this capital funding, one of the districts has a nature center, and they bought a new microscope that has batteries, and they can take it down to the river at the nature center, and they can look at macroinvertebrates. They can take it to schools. So they've been able to increase the sort of value and complexity of their programming to local students and schools. They're going to build a pavilion. They'd like to build a pavilion at the nature center. So they said they're using some of that capital funds that they received, and then they wrote a grant to get some more funds so that they can build this pavilion, which will be wonderful, so they can have outdoor classes and programming at their nature center. And a couple of districts received funds for trucks. Of course, those were they wanted electric trucks, and I guess the list was too long and everything was held up. So I know at least one is now going to get a conventional pickup truck, but we use our truck. We have a truck. We were the only district that had a truck that we had received through Vermont Land Trust, and we use it all the time. We do a lot of tree planting. Most conservation districts do a lot of tree planting. So just to be able to have the tools that we need to deliver the programs that help improve water quality, or that help our state or federal partners sort of get their programs onto the ground, has been great, and it's been made more efficient through what I guess I think was sort of a modest request last year, although it felt like a lot to us. And then a couple of districts received like water pumps and the type of equipment that they would need to make their tree planting more efficient. Many of our districts plant thousands of trees each spring. And so to have equipment that makes that more efficient, I mean, we don't have that equipment, and we carry our water in buckets from the stream to water these thousands of trees. So just the improvements that funding provided for the conservation districts was very tangible. That's what I'm trying to say. That would be me.
That's great.
So is that your district or?
No, that's me.
Oh, your district.
It is. However, we have agricultural staff that works. We manage agricultural staff for 3 districts, and so we have the Rutland and Bennington County those 3 districts are very closely together, and so we sort of share that in terms of the agricultural services we provide.
Senator Campy and I share a similar first name, so.
Yeah, makes sense.
Senator Collmore sits on the institutions committee, which does the capital grant stuff. And then Richie, Senator Westman, and I sit on appropriations, and so you know, we're pretty
I think you
well.
got somebody else in institutions too.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Irene's on there. So,
2x2, 3x3.
yeah, so
Pretty well.
Funny how
covered.
that worked out.
it helps to have folks in the right places, I guess. Anyways, so welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for
So
having us.
those are your buckets or?
Those are not mine. Those
No?
are, I guess, the Winooski districts. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Winooski
Yeah.
districts. We have our own buckets.
But that's your office
The
building.
office, yeah. And
Oh,
I don't know if I'm probably not supposed to speak anymore, but the other exciting thing is that we rented a little part of our office to Slate Valley Trails. And it's just sort of a thing about the economic development of Poultney and changes and things happening. It's just really exciting to be part of all this that's happening.
Now, you bought the building, right?
We did, and because we're a quasi-state government, I mean, it's sort of I think it's sort of in the states, like we're keeping it from the state in a way. Like if we wanted to sell it, we would have to have permission from the governor to sell it.
Yeah.
So it's a public resource.
You didn't tell us how big it is. or-
So it was built in 1920 and it's 1,920 square feet.
So, yeah,
That's a picture of the grand opening back there.
Yeah, so it's both it's this whole space, and Slate Valley Trails is on this side and we're on the far side.
Yeah.
And we have a new coffee shop right in next door, like it feels really exciting.
That's great.
well,
That's
Sorry,
great.
off topic.
You could go to the next slide. So again, I'm Lauren Weston. I manage the Franklin County Conservation District. And I'll kind of walk you through some of our program areas and also how we do it type of thing. And so please feel free to ask me questions. I'll start with agriculture. It seems fitting. So every conservation district is a little different. And that's because the needs of each district are different. Up in Franklin County, we have a lot of agriculture. So we do a lot of agricultural work. We also partner with the Grand Isle Conservation District, and we do a lot of their agricultural work as well, because there's a more limited number of farms over there. So we figured we would get all trained up and then go and help over there as well. A lot of what we do in our agricultural work is connecting farmers and forest owners. So agriculture is more like working lands in general through our eyes. We connect them with resources and assistance. As was mentioned earlier, last year, the Franklin County District created a statewide guide to agricultural producers for assistance. And the 2023 version is 106 pages of annual grant and technical assistance programs that are pretty much always available. We didn't include the one-offs when additional money comes in randomly. And so we've been distributing that as widely as possible. We're going to print 500 copies of the 2023 version to distribute. I was going to bring one today, but I was at a meeting the other night and it was my last copy and a farmer needed it. So I gave that to her. And basically it's just trying to interpret all of the state and federal programs and nonprofit and for-profit programs that farmers have access to for both water quality projects, but also economic viability. So we really try to help farms exist and do their best work. Additionally, with farmers, we will help them one-on-one writing grants, but also with their nutrient management planning. So manure spreading, we write a lot of the plans for the small farms and the certified small farms in the state. And that's alongside UVM Extension's class. So Heather Darby's team runs a class every year, and we bring farmers to that class and work with them one-on-one throughout it. And then after they go through the class once, we help them update it every year with record keeping and planning for the future based on their soil tests. We also host local working groups, also known as local-led conservation meetings, and those are opportunities for the public to come talk to us about their priorities and where they think NRCS federal funding should be going on working lands. And we're still kind of new to this process. We're developing it with NRCS to actually change the points different projects will get, so that in your county, something that place really needs might be ranked higher in their funding prioritization than somewhere where it doesn't matter as much. So we're working through those a lot with farmers and folks who maybe applied for federal assistance and didn't get it, but really do need to get this project done. We also work in natural resources conservation and restoration, and those are a lot of big words that on their own don't necessarily mean too much, but what that means on the ground is we do a lot of tree plantings, as my colleagues have said. I'll be planting 12 acres of trees this spring with hopefully many volunteers. And we also several of us host tree and trout sales as well. So beyond what we're able to do on our own, we bring native trees and also food producing plants to the state that get distributed. I believe I have about 13,000 stems coming in May to distribute.
That's what we walked down to see, wasn't it?
We went and saw some of the willows, yeah.
Willows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, of course, they have to be planted where it's moist. And we had plenty of water.
Yes. It was very wet at our event.
Yeah.
But they were growing and sending out little shoots and leaves and
Yeah, they're coming along good.
yes. We also do stream restoration and floodplain reconnection projects. So we will be the boots on the ground for, in particular, the Department of Environmental Conservation. We'll work closely with our river scientists and river engineers, and we'll go out and we'll find landowners who are interested in improving the way that water moves through their land.
I know the Missisquoi up in Enosburg up through there is eating up quite a lot of land.
It has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has and it's still at it. And yeah, it's gotten wider and wider, so and that dirt and whatever fills in the bottom, so it's pretty shallow by the dairy center and
Yeah.
up through there. And I've maintained, of course, that's only my scientific knowledge how it works. But if you take water that used to be 5 feet deep and now it's 1 foot deep, it's going to heat up a lot quicker because it's spread out, not very thick. By the time it gets to the lake, it's rolling in there. It's got to be rolling in there at a higher temperature than it used to. So then you get things growing in the lake that you really rather not have growing. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm sure people that study that know the knowledge of that knows that the water's getting warmer.
That's right. It's certainly getting warmer and
So some of those willows, will you be, do you plant them on near brooks or is it rivers or both?
both. We will plant them on the big stream or big rivers and small streams. Honestly, wherever a landowner will let us plant some trees, we're gonna go plant some trees along that stream. And part of that is to create shade so that it doesn't heat up as much. It's also for the roots to hold the banks together. It's also to treat in many cases and collect the phosphorus running off of farm fields before it can hit the streams. So hopefully there's not more sediment in the streams rising those riverbeds.
Yeah.
So we'll do that work. We'll also, we've been helping with the current effort to take out dams, derelict dams in Vermont that aren't serving a purpose. So we have done a lot of work in many different areas to try to get those funded and identified as well. And we do work around the lakes, so lakes and ponds. So not only Lake Champlain, in my district, we also have Lake Carmi, which is keeping us very busy.
You know, that's kind of a bad subject.
But we were able to successfully, actually in December, we took out someone's concrete lake shore wall, and we took it out and we put in a nice stone toe with soil on top, and we're gonna plant it in the spring. And so it's more of a natural space for the lake to move and disperse its energy from the wind. Hillary also does a lot of work, including using high school interns and post-college interns to work with the lake associations in her area to do evaluations for folks who own camps at lakes to see how they can improve the water quality coming off of their camps.
Can I ask a quick question about lakes? Do you treat man-made lakes differently than other lakes? Because I know we were having in Bennington, we have Lake Parent, it's a man-made lake, it's been there for so long. And I'm just wondering if there's any policy around that.
So my understanding
Yeah, no, sure.
is that the majority of the lakes in Vermont are man-made.
Uh-huh,
And so at this point, we are treating them pretty similarly
okay,
across the board.
great.
There's a lot of dams that created lakes.
Yeah, right, yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't even think of that.
okay,
yeah.
thanks.
The dam at Lake Carmi is very interesting if you ever
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
up there,
nerd
yeah,
out
yeah.
pretty hard. And then we also, some districts do work with stormwater remediation. So that is treating the water coming off of paved surfaces or rooftops. And so they'll install some of those treatment systems that you've seen. They might install a rain garden. They might work with the roads crews in their towns to improve the ditches on the side of the road. And we also assess and fund culvert replacements and increases. So as the climate changes, stormwater is increasing, so we need bigger culverts. We also need bigger culverts so that fish can move upstream through those culverts. And for all of those many things, we do education and outreach on these topics. We host events, we do one-on-one education, we do education with students and adults, the same. We are getting better at social media and getting the word out to folks in a way that they want to receive it as well. You can go to the next slide. So I'm going to work from the center white circle out for you, and I'll read those as well for you. So how we get all of this work implemented is we start with the landowners, the farmers, the towns, and the partners, and we really figure out what the need is for a certain constituent. Based on that, we'll typically go into assessment, so figuring out what the need is, and then education and outreach, making sure that everybody's aware of the issue and what could be done, so that everyone can, regardless of our direct help or not, can at least understand what the problem is. Then we'll go into planning and technical assistance. So with farmers, that typically looks like a long-term relationship, helping them project by project on their farm. With a water quality project, that might look like figuring out, do I need to go hire an engineer for this project? Or is it really just a simple tree planting and we can kind of get it done on our own? We then move into project design, coordination, and implementation. So if you do need that engineer, we're the ones who hire and manage those folks, typically using funds, especially now from Act 76. We're using those funds very soon to fund these clean water non-regulatory projects. And once they're designed, we make sure we have the funds to implement them as well. And then we do some monitoring of those projects and making sure we keep those long-term relationships so that people keep a face to this type of work and they know who to turn to when they have questions. And throughout that whole process, we learn a lot, and therefore we go back to our state and federal partners and nonprofit partners, and we share back those experiences to make sure that future programs or existing programs can be changed to really meet the on-the-ground need. And so if we do that well, we're achieving improved water quality, improved soil health, we're building climate resilience, and we're working very hard to establish economic viability, especially for our working lands constituents.
So there are a lot of regulations that might, in some minds, push farmers out. But if they have the right resources and connections and then actually access to more funds, it can work out smoothly.
Well, if you take like, I know river basins, nobody ever lived within 1,000 miles of them, they're still gonna be eating the banks of the rivers out. And I mean, really, humans improve the water quality. I mean, we get accused of course, abusing it, but and some people want everything to go back to nature. Well, you know, a woods that you just never walk in doesn't grow that well or that quick. You know, I mean, if you overcut, then you're abusing it, but you can't leave it with no attention. And I think fields and river banks and all that stuff need some attention. And it isn't because anybody abused that, it's the river itself and the water that's doing their own thing.
Right. I think we're really trying to help landowners and land stewards make good conservation decisions on the land that they manage, for improved landscapes in the future. Now and in the future.
You have the Rock River in your district.
I do.
Is that coming along, getting any better, or?
One of our partners, the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, has been hiring many different engineers and scientists to really study that. And they're actually taking on, I believe, 15 sites this year to monitor water quality, to really try to pinpoint where changes are happening that's good and maybe where changes are happening that's bad, to try to get some more practices on the ground. The farmers really they're doing their share, more than their fair share of this water quality work. And so it's kind of, we're not entirely sure what's going on in that particular basin, but we're hoping to get some more data to inform some more improvements.
Yeah, so you work with those folks in Northern Lake.
We do.
Yeah.
In my district in particular, there's a lot of partners that we work with. Some other districts have far fewer partners, so they actually take on a much larger role in certain sectors. In my district, we have a lot of water quality areas of improvement, so we're all very busy, but there's many of us.
Yeah, you've got quite a few problems.
I do.
Yeah.
We're working on it. Yeah. So that's.
Yeah, you've got a job security in your area. That's for sure.
We've actually grown. When I started, there was just 2 full-time staff, and now we're at 4 full-time staff, and we could easily expand beyond that. Ideally with some additional core funding, because I currently manage 37 grants for 4 staff.
Yeah.
And it's just,
Well,
it's
it's hard
unsustainable.
to do without proper funding. I mean, it's embarrassing to hear someone say they didn't get a raise in 10 years, you know. On that part, it's embarrassing. No, it's not good. Anything else?
No, that was great.
That's all I got for now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't think I've kept it a secret how much I appreciate the work that you folks do. For the 3 new members of the committee, I think we need to point out that this is a non-regulatory entity. And in many cases, that has its advantages. You know, the agencies of natural resource and agriculture, properly so, are constituted to have a certain regulatory function, which means enforcement, and that sometimes creates tension between farmers, landowners, and the agency. These folks, and I've seen it firsthand, come into a situation and are welcomed because they can provide needed assistance. So I think that needed to be said. It was always, let me put it the other way. It was never my intention to sit at a desk and write a grant. I mean, I guess there are some people that are born that really enjoy doing that. I don't think anybody here, ever set out to say, that's what I really want to do for the rest of my life. So to me, it's counterproductive to have people that are doing really good work in the field get chained down to do the paperwork. And so grants are important. I know that's a lifeblood. They're also non-predictable and not sustaining. So that's another fact. And then, if you take a look at the conservation districts, as they talk a lot about planting trees, the funding is kind of the nutrient that we need to have these people have to do a better job. So I'm fully in support of the appropriations. I don't know where it'll end up. Maybe it'll be 3, maybe it'll be short of that. I don't know.
I see. So you feel as though if we could appropriate it, it would lift off some of this grant writing time
Absolutely.
that people need. They're doing that. And I agree. Having done some advancement work over the years, it is unpredictable. And it takes a lot of work. And sometimes you do a lot of work and you get no, which is hard.
Well, think about it. If we had to depend on what we make for a living to write a grant, how could you ever look ahead more than however long that period is? So it doesn't make any sense.
That's a good point.
And some of us would have started that. No, what we'll do eventually, in the next few weeks is we'll send a letter if we so decide to approach, asking for this appropriation to be, approved. And we were doing pretty good last year, right till the end, and then it kind of fell apart. But anyways, so who's up next?
That was actually the end of our presentation.
That is it.
It is.
Well, and Jill, did you have something?
Hey, we've had some of these discussions before, but I'd love to just give you the statistics. And I do want to thank you again profusely for the support we got, even though it felt small compared to our ask. It was hugely important to us. And it felt really good to have that shot in the arm for Conservation District. So related to grants, I just wanted to highlight the grants we wrote in 2022. 104 districts wrote 144 grants, totaling nearly 7 million. They were awarded a little over 4 million. And then VACD and Council wrote another 18 grants, nearly 12 million. We were awarded 7 million of those. So there's a ton of time going into grant writing. But the other issue around grants, in addition to the ones you've already described, is the amount of money that can be allocated for administrative support is very small. The amount of overhead allowed on these grants. There tend to be quite tight restrictions about you need to deliver this, you need to deliver that, whether it's number of stems planted, number of farmers visited. And districts at this point, because there's a lot of opportunity, actually need funding for admin staff, for like bookkeepers and accountants and administrators to help them manage all those grants, because these people are technical experts. They're engineers, they're natural resource experts, and it's a waste of their time to be doing that work. And we'd love to let the administrators be the administrators and free them up to actually get out there and do the fun stuff in the field, as well as apply their scientific knowledge to develop and implement projects. So
where do most of those grants come from?
I
USDA or?
I did do a little digging. I didn't look at the number of grants to each funder, but I looked at the expenditures of districts in 2022 were 52% state funded. So that's the Agency of Ag, Department of Environmental Conservation, Fish and Wildlife, and Forest Parks and Rec. It's mostly where those grants come from. 23% federal. Most of that is Lake Champlain Basin Program and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Partners for Fish and Wildlife, a little bit of NRCS. 10% private foundation grants. So that would be Vermont Community Foundation, the Wellborn Fund, is that what it's called? Grassroots Environmental Fund, some of those small foundations that fund. 3% local government, so that's towns, RPCs, and other districts. And then 12% everything else, so that's sales, rentals, individual donations, fee for service, miscellaneous like investment income. So that's roughly, districts are still heavily state funded. They also receive donated office space because of our special relationship with NRCS, donated office space and computer facilities. But districts are ready to burst out of that space. There's a limited amount of space allowed per district. And they're facing moving out of the district or having satellite offices because NRCS will only provide so many what they call seats. And the districts are ready to burst out of those, which will increase the administrative overhead because then they'll have offices and utilities and those kind of buying their own computers. Some of those have been low because they're supported by NRCS.
I know this past fall, when the state came out with $3 million for towns to be able to hire people to help get grants. And I went around to some of my town offices and clerks and had a printout of that and said that, you know, you could write a short grant. And well, most of them didn't have anybody to do grants, and a few of them said, well, we have NRCS do our help our town a lot in writing grants and so I mean,
and often that's the district. They don't distinguish between the district and NRCS.
yeah.
NRCS staff actually don't write grants, they award funds, but they don't actually write grants.
Yeah.
Probably the district that they need.
No, it's great. You folks do great work and it's unnoticed, I think, sometimes and certainly unappreciated at other times. And you know, we're mixed up in ag stuff, a lot of us, and so we hear direct from people that, I mean, I've never heard of bad words. So, and I'm now dealing with landowners and farmers all the time. And so I think, you know, keep up the good work. We'll just have to do a better job trying to get you some money to do it with.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if I could just add too, I just wanted to make sure that, so it sounds, you know, that funding that we receive and those grants that we write, a lot of them we of course would keep writing because they're for project implementation. So it's just to stabilize our own internal staffing and have the staff that we need, so that when we write a grant, it's because it's solving a problem or it's meeting a need that a landowner or a town has. It's not just writing a grant so we can keep a staff person, you know.
Yeah.
It would help us be so much more efficient and able to prioritize the issues on the landscape because of that stability internally.
See, there should be some way that the agency, if they have this money that we usually have given to them, or they've gotten it from the federal government. I don't know why they couldn't contract directly with you for a certain amount. But they make you write a grant, and it would seems like it would save everybody time and a lot of energy. And get more work done. If you didn't have to fool with that, because if you weren't needed, you wouldn't be there. You know, if the phone never rang or you never got an email, or you know, you wouldn't just sit in an office with nothing to do. And you know, year after year after year, it seems like you folks get busier and more projects and it takes money to take care of all that for our citizens.
There's huge opportunity now. You know, there is sort of money floating around, right? But it tends to be for implementation and not for the foundational support that
Yeah.
enables the districts to assess needs, interact with community members or landowners, develop programs, and then write the grant that's for the specific project. So it's the grease between the gears where we need a lot of support. And also we need to free up the district manager to not only be a project implementer, right? Many of our district managers are finance directors, program directors, and executive directors, right? They're fulfilling all of those roles.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to hire technical staff to do the technical work. They can spend time talking to you, talking to local landowners, going to, development review board meetings, for towns. Those kinds of activities are very limited to be funded.
So if we get a letter off to appropriations, you have a proposed budget for that $3 million. So when we go before the money committee, we could say, well, this is what it's going to be used for.
Yes.
And is that broken down to districts, or is that pretty much a general appropriation that would be dispersed?
So we did both. We had an extensive process over the summer where we invited districts to articulate their needs, and then we had collective discussions, and then council articulated its need in terms of managing grants and providing capacity building support to districts. So it's a combined budget for districts and council. So we do have numbers that the districts gave us. When we're awarded, assuming whatever the amount is, there would be a new process where we revisit the submitted budgets, see how much money we get, and then come up with criteria for distributing the funds across districts.
Yeah.
So because we don't know exactly how much we get with this request, we haven't committed like, for sure, you're gonna get X number, right? There'll be another budgeting process, as there was with the funds we received this year. You increased our core funding by 250,000. We had internal discussions and decided how to spend that. We decided to give every district 20,000 instead of the 7 or 8 they were getting previously. And on an equitable distribution basis. Other grants, it varies by district. So a large ag district might have 4 ag staff. They're getting more money from the agency of ag than a district that doesn't have that programs. Or a district that proposes a large stormwater project. Emily had one that was $440,000 project in Hardwick. She got that money because her district was implementing the project. So there is variation across districts.
Yeah.
I mean, mostly the contractors got that.
Yeah,
To be
yeah.
clear.
Let's be clear, Emily's not.
No.
Yeah, so what we want is a core foundation for every district. And then they develop programs based on local needs, which they write grants for. I mean, I think that's the way it should work, that there's a base for all districts. And we're not there yet at the base, and the 20,000 is still way below what every district should have space funding.
And there are 8 categories of our $3 million request, right?
Yes.
So this one pager that they have,
Yes, they have that.
it identifies the categories and the amount for each.
Yeah.
So yes, it's largely personnel, but it's for things like community engagement, training our ag staff, supporting the environmental justice process, helping communities manage that process. We were very involved in the PBS Soil Health Working Group. I was an official member, and we also had one of our district managers participating very actively as well. The technical assistance for that program will be put out to bid, but we actually expect that districts will end up providing the technical assistance under that program. So
Now, have you been upstairs to the house side, or?
we're headed there this afternoon.
Oh, you are, good. Yeah, so And as Carolyn Partridge is not the chair, she retired this last year.
Big
so-
changes.
Yeah, so, but any help, it's good that you're going there because it'll be the same deal as on this side.
Yeah.
And Carolyn was very good about working with appropriations. So that'll be helpful.
Yes.
So are there other questions from the committee, or do you have any questions for us?
I guess I'm curious, you seemed very interested in the forest owners. In the
Oh,
beginning. I was curious if you had any suggestions for what we should be doing to better serve our forest owners.
No, I just wondered because I believe that the districts did quite a few bridges for loggers. Back a few years ago, we did a bunch of money for that. You folks, some districts actually looked after that program and no, I was just asking because, we still have a lot of woods in Vermont and we've got the Rygate mill that uses a lot of waste wood and we have quite a few people in the rural parts of Vermont that make their living in the woods and I have to put log roads in and things like that and water bars and so I just was wondering.
Actually, several of us were on a call 2 weeks ago with Dave Wilcox, the state forester, and he's actually looking to get the Skidder Ridge program reinvigorated again. And a lot of the districts have expressed interest in helping with that and doing that outreach to those landowners.
Yeah, and I actually think that's a really good example of something that we're being asked to do. And then once we start to think more critically about it, at least where I go is, yeah, that'd be great to do that. The funding for our time to do that would come from the rental fee of the Skidder Bridge, which wouldn't really come into the district until the Skidder Bridge is rented, but to get the Skidder Bridge rented and get the program set up, I don't know how I'm gonna fund my time to do that and do it to my standard, right? Like, I could do it and set it up, but I would like to do it so that it's successful and sustainable. And I just don't have the funding lying around to start it. And so probably and for that and other reasons, we probably won't accept a Skidder Bridge this year. But I think that's a really good example of a partner asking, just assuming that conservation districts can do this and asking us to do it, and we're great partners to do it. But we struggle to figure out how to respond to requests like that.
It's unfortunate we can't always say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the Skidder Bridge is interesting too, because during COVID, I don't think any new Skidder bridges were built for the statewide program. So all of our Skidder bridges are at the end of their useful life at this point. So we do, like, it's the time to do something to, have more built and distribute that to our local lumber yards so that we can get them rented. But
yeah, in our Commissioner of Forests and Parks is, Michael Schneider. He was really great and spent quite a lot of time in this committee promoting, good forestry practices and Skidder bridges and so I don't know if we've got the new commissioner.
I haven't met him.
No, I haven't met whoever it is gonna be the new person. Now, do some of the districts own equipment that they lease out and or rent or or like.
So we have equipment that we rent. We don't actually really charge people for it. We have an aerator that we charge a few dollars, but what's that?
You loan it.
We loan it.
Yeah, you're a
exactly.
good neighbor.
But we've been really lucky because the Vermont Land Trust has been the way that we got our first piece of equipment. And they were trying to help farmers transition to organic farming, and they wanted to make sure that the water quality piece was included. And so they wanted to make it as easy as possible. So that's how we got our truck and our first no-till seeder. And then since then, we've had groups, those farmers who were served with that equipment have actually come together and they started their own equipment cooperative, and we've written the grants for them. And so they've received funds from 3 different places to buy a number of pieces of equipment that are used for water quality, but also to bring back small grains to the Medway Valley. So for the first time in a really long time, they grew rye and winter wheat and some different sorghum, some different small grains. And there's a local mill now that's in Middletown Springs, actually, that's available to help them process that grain if they'd like to. And they're kind of looking at the economics between growing grain for feed and or for like value added sort of human consumption products. And so they're working through that right now, and these different sources of funding and us helping. So we help make sure we insure the equipment, we make sure that it's repaired. And then we are supposed to manage some type of a fee system. We're looking at like a point of sale, like can we use our iPhones to take a $50 payment or something? Because the farmers are saying that they would be interested in helping to keep this going. So we're working on all those pieces right now, but it's exciting. And I think with some of the funding that's available right now through the Agency of Agriculture and the Vermont Housing Conservation Board and some of the different other groups that have the funding for equipment, it's coming together, and it's really exciting to see that happening.
And I'll say too, my district does not rent any equipment, and that's because we are co-housed with the NRCS in a basement office space with 1 storage room and no parking lot. So there's nowhere to put equipment. I know some other districts have their board members keep the equipment at their houses and farms, but then don't have a truck, to move the equipment. Or your district is all of the Winooski Basin, and so getting something from Colchester to Barry might not be the most ideal situation. So there's great successes where there's great successes, and there's great opportunities where there doesn't exist yet.
Because some of that, like no-till seeders and manure injectors, those are expensive pieces of equipment. And if 2 or 3 farms, the co-op deal sounds like a pretty good practice to have. So small farms could work together and use the same piece of equipment. Of course, we down in your district, Perry Waite used to be the rep from down in Paulette, was up here for years, and so we put together a little deal where we would build a digester in the Medway Valley, and so the small farms used to be quite a few there, could take their manure to the central digester and produce electricity, and then they would go and get the finished or the product in the spring. Well, they got to arguing over, well, my manure is better than your manure, and how do I know I'm gonna get my manure back? And I mean, it really got down into the weeds bad, and the whole idea, because we were trying to clean the Meadows River up, and yeah, that was quite a fun experience. And Perry finally said, well, I think we're gonna have to do something different. But if we had small digesters, a way to have small digesters for small farms, that would, but they aren't economically feasible, so.
Not yet. You never know.
I wanted to.
Well, oh yeah, they're working on it.
Right.
I wanted to go back to forestry for just a second. So as we're beginning to focus more on climate change and climate resilience, impact of the ag sector on climate change, I'd say that USDA is beginning to shift its priorities to support more work with forest landowners, so that we're going to see more funding offered to forest landowners for, agroforestry and other practices that will be carbon sinks, basically.
Yeah.
And so I think there will be opportunities. USDA just gave a $500,000 grant to an agroforestry nonprofit that will be training people to do agroforestry and provide grants to farmers to do plantings on marginal farmland.
Yeah.
So not only on riparian buffers, we're planting on marginal farmland. So it's an area that I think all of us will be, all the people working in the climate, natural resources community will be turning more attention to, as this focus on energy and climate change, carbon sequestration.
If, I know, do any of your districts have ag land that sat idle for the last 20 years and seen what's happened to it?
Here and there, yeah. A lot of folks have been using it the whole time, but there's some lands that have reverted back to, these early successional areas of the small shrubs, and then you get larger shrubs and the big trees. Yeah, a lot of the places are going back to forest land if they don't maintain them.
In Jay, Vermont, my family used to pick up through milk when I was small. And we used to get 2 truckloads of milk up there and take it to North Troy to the creamery. Now there's not one farm left in the northern end of Jay. It's all grown up to not very nice looking stuff.
Right, well, yeah, there's a lot of development pressure, especially along the 89 corridor in Franklin County. So a lot of farms are selling their development rights and selling their lands and getting out to have some form of retirement income.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah,
A lot of the lands.
Sometimes I wonder about, I was here when we put that program together, and it's a one-time deal. Maybe we should have set that up in like every 25 years you could renew it. And so the older generation could sell the development rights, and the son or daughter take over the farm, and they could retire well with the sale of those. But what's the son do that now is old enough to retire? The development rights are gone. So what do they do? And history is pretty important, and I think we should have probably set that up on a 25-year rotation, and so then the next generation would have had something that they could, we'll sign up, and then their children could take over, but some one-time deal. And so anyways, anything else that we should know? I think Linda, we have enough numbers and things so we can put together a letter for the 3 million and stuff. And, so I think.
Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions. And again, thank you so much for all the championing you did for us last session.
Yeah.
I really want to acknowledge that. It's very important.
And I would add just one thing, I just wanted to bring up from last year because it was talked about a lot, how the funding was more and then got cut. And we actually, you might remember Senator Stone, that we actually supported that move to have it be a smaller amount in the NLCC line item rather than a larger amount from the Clean Water Fund. So just as you're deliberating this request, I just want to put out the information that last year, the committee tried to have the funding request come out of the Clean Water Fund. And that is challenging because money out of the Clean Water Fund,
It's the same money
it
you're
still has all
getting.
the deliverables and
It's where the grants come from.
it's where the grants come from. So it still has all the project deliverables
Okay.
and small admin, not any of the other grants. So it's really important to keep the request in the NRCC line item. That's the only unrestricted funding that they get.
So your money actually should come out of the general fund as a solid appropriation, not steal it from Peter to give to Paul, and then Peter and Paul don't have any more money at the end than what they started with.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, if there isn't anything else, thank you very much for your
Thank you very
time
much.
and-
Thank you.
And,
If any questions come up, feel free, you've got my email and names, and we can find the right people to answer your questions if you have any.
yeah, very
Come back in
good.
if there's anything in particular you'd like to focus on in more detail.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sal.
Well, it was good to see you.
So we'll go up here now.
We have, a group coming at 11:15,
Okay.
so we'll, we're gonna actually get a break today.
What a deal.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Good for you.